All right, I call the Monday, March 6th, the Community Wellness Committee of the County Council to order. So Councilmember Luke Murphy here. Councilmember Caleb Parashute is not, and I'm here, of course. So minutes, did everyone have a chance to look? Did everyone have a chance to look at the minutes?
This was in February. So I did, forgot the date. I was unfortunately sick that day, so
Okay.
we didn't vote on that, do we? This is more just like a
Yeah, I
they
think,
look good kind of?
correct.
Okay.
Right. Yep, all right. So I figured, given that we had, I guess it's 2 weeks ago now, our kind of children teen summit that we had online, figured it would be important to kind of debrief it and talk about some of the takeaways, and it'd be interesting to hear everyone's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And then B, I think the next steps really need to be part of our discussion. So let me turn it over to you, Luke, to start with. What were some of your thoughts?
Well, I thought it, first of all, I thought it was very, very informative, and really appreciate the opportunity and the work that you did, Mark, putting it together. What I thought was really, really interesting was there wasn't a lot of dissonance. There's a lot of folks that really acknowledged, which shouldn't be a surprise, but whenever you get folks in the same room, you might expect different ideas. But a lot of the issues were kind of, unfortunately, everybody was really on the same track about lack of mental health services for children, difficulty retaining mental health professionals, and really any health professionals. I believe there's quite a bit of an issue with poverty that was discussed, and it's something that it was, I want to use my words nicely, not nice to see, but it was nice to hear that, one agency said, oh, didn't see this, I don't know what you're talking about. It really seemed like folks were on the same page, which was good. And the willingness to work together, I thought was really inspiring and a positive sign. And I'm really hoping that in our roles as council members, we don't necessarily have the expertise in these areas, but we do have a pulpit, or rather a place to express our voice. And hopefully we can use our power to hopefully get folks together and really kind of pushing towards this goal, as we were talking about a little beforehand, of maybe working towards a community space.
You want to share some of those? Mayor, do you have your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, honestly, again, my apologies for joining that meeting as late as I did. I was sorry to have come in after what looked like about 45 minutes to an hour's worth of conversation. But based on what I saw in the half hour, 40 minutes that I was there, first of all, I was impressed with relatively short notice the numbers of people who were there, and certainly the engagement that they had across the board. And there weren't a whole lot of silent boxes in the Zoom, which sometimes you do have people just kind of show up. But there seemed to be a pretty good dialogue, and to Luke's point, it did seem like there was a lot of consensus, again, in that period that I was present for, around the identification of the need. There didn't seem to be anybody contesting that, and the need, in fact, to be creative in addressing that, and that there was some potential, it seemed like, for the identification of partners within that group to make things happen. So that, just the same as the first summit, I walked away from, again, the limited time that I was involved in the conversation, feeling like you guys are really starting to pull together the players that need to be pulled together, identifying through those conversations that you've had already the gaps that exist, that everyone, happily or not, but everybody seems to be acknowledging that fact. There's nobody that I saw or have seen that's got themselves in a defensive position around that. Everybody is seemingly looking to see what they can do to bring something to the solution, and this about what you could hope for. So, you know, pushing the dialogue forward and engaging partners in that dialogue is what one might hope would have come from that. And that's what I saw. And to Luke, you referenced it kind of tangentially. The piece that I saw, because again, I was on there for a great length of time, was this notion that came at the end of the meeting of a congregate space for people to be able to access services in one stop. And I think that's a great conceit that is not us inventing the wheel. That's happened and typically does happen in many communities. And I was quite honestly just taken aback by the fact that we don't have that. It was just something I know obviously that we don't have it, but it was just like, yeah, of course we should have that. A community center where people can find themselves connected to, you know, every service in some sort of a kiosk fashion on a schedule, whether you need your taxes done, or you need, you know, assistance with childcare, or you need assistance with, you know, SNAP, or whatever it may be, you know, to be able to have that kind of access, and at the same time have the potential of a recreational space that's, you know, connected to that. You know, the Armory was the place that was referenced. It makes a lot of sense to me. We'll see, you know, how this moves forward, but I was impressed with it. I was happy with it, and it just continues to, you know, provide me, you know, a rationale for every time I have an opportunity to say what a great job you guys are doing.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I share both of your thoughts. So I was impressed with, as Lou started, the amount of agreement on the issues. You know, it's pretty clear what they are. That was one thing. Two, the willingness to collaborate. In fact, there's collaboration taking place right there in the meeting as a particular resource booklet was referenced, and I think Will from OFO very quickly said this one, and then, or somebody did, and then bang, it was now in the, I think they sent it out to everybody. So you know, it's just kind of good to see that level of collaboration. So one of my takeaways on that particular point was, we've been talking about the role that the city can play, potentially. And I've been thinking all for, do I have that right? As maybe a vehicle through which we can do if we have a problem with the website. But it's that a site for people to come into. So that resource was a perfect example. Some people knew about it, some people didn't. It was already in a PDF form. Could that be something that's housed there, right? So again, the role we play in facilitating information, of locating virtually the different organizations and what they're doing. So it goes back to what came out of the summit this August, was trying to have that site, you know, something online that has everybody there. But beyond that, everyone's name is great, contact information, excellent resources that they have available. And then the last takeaway was, two more. One, the need for them to keep on talking, or for folks to keep on talking. And I feel like there's something there. That was one of the pieces at the August summit that we discussed, was, okay, what next? How do we have these conversations? And I think that there's a real need, there's a real interest in trying to have a space for discussion. So I wanted to talk about that point today as well, and I've got an idea there. And then lastly, your last point there about the community site for both recreational community, as we usually think about kind of a, you know, recreational type space, but as you were saying, the need for services that might be able to be maybe not located there permanently, but could push in, like you said, maybe tax prep season, or a health clinic that, you know, people would stop by on a particular day, whatever, or making things up. But those types of things where they're able to serve the community, and then our role would be to facilitate it. Again, make sure that people are going and then get that word out, as well as trying to make sure that we're getting word out to our partners as well. So I guess those were some of the takeaways. And last point, sorry, I keep saying we only have one more takeaway, I have all these others. It was amazing to me once again, and the Chief Witzenberg has really drilled this home with me, but it really kind of reinforced it was in this meeting. the overlapping nature of all these issues. You know, so we cannot talk about children and teens and their wellness without talking about some of the struggles that these kids have with, we say mental health, but specifically that, you know, there was a lot of, the word came up quite a bit, trauma that they've gone through or are going through. That they don't have much support to be able to work through, talk through these things, and the schools are doing everything they can, but they also could have another 50 people on board trying to help out with these things. So that was one piece. The fact, you know, poverty and the impact on poverty, it's just, you know, I know that we have a hard time ourselves addressing, but man, it just reinforces the real need to address some of these root causes of poverty in our country, at least, you know, try to figure out what we can do, because crossing that with food insecurity and how that's a real, you know, piece for folks. The fact that, and I think Superintendent Brindley talked about the stressors that parents have at home with regard to poverty and housing and all the things that kind of swirl around that, and you go, man, we've got some real problems here, right? I mean, not that we have the problems, these problems that we have within our country are located here within our space of our city. And it'd be nice to be able to fix those, but in the meantime, what can we do here? Right? How do we figure out how to address them? We cannot fix everything, but can we do something to alleviate some of these issues, or at least to try to reduce the impact on children? So sorry, those are a lot of issues that I don't know how we solve, but that was, I kind of walked away from there going, man, we've got some issues.
Well, I know Tom Brindley, John Brindley also suggested that the city, I guess it'll roll through legislative, will outlaw the use of cell phones in the classroom. We're gonna get made on that.
Right, exactly. Steve was hopeful. Yeah. So those are some thoughts. I guess, again, so to go back to some of these particular points, and I'd love to then begin to figure out, A, how do we put this, how do we turn this kind of clearinghouse information for organizations into action? I think trying to get a little more planned for that. I'd love to have more discussion on that tonight. And the second point is then, how do we maybe facilitate ongoing conversations? What role can we play in that? And how does that look? And maybe there's a structure for doing that. I'm thinking about it when I served on the Regional Innovation Council. And is there an idea there, right? To maybe that we have a bunch of groups that are interested in this conversation. And I would love to hear from Chief Witzenberg, because I know his group addresses some of these things. But do we want to try to have some groups come out of this that we task that group and maybe a lead kind of a facilitator of that group that we can be involved in and say, let's continue to have monthly conversations or bi-monthly conversations, just check in. Where are we at? What resources do you have? Any grants you know about? Challenges that you're seeing? Anything we need to know about? And just to facilitate the conversation and see where they might go. So, all right, that's it. I spoke for 15 minutes. I'm tapped out. Thoughts about any of that?
I think what really is something that is a good opportunity is thinking about what the next steps are. I think we've had some phenomenal dialogue and discussion. Not to say that we have all the pieces, but I wonder if, I don't want to inundate folks with emails, but based on our discussions tonight about some of the steps or some of the priorities, if we could put together a survey and send it back to the folks that were there with some of the ideas that we have, which we haven't necessarily discussed yet, but talking about what we think would be good going forward, and if they agree, that's great, and if not, great too, that'll help us focus a little bit more.
I have no problem with that. Trying to get as much more information as we can, absolutely.
It might make sense too, based on the survey. What do you want the survey to tell you? A lot of times, when you put together a survey, you're hoping for some general consensus in certain areas.
Mm-hmm.
So, to your point, Mark, the idea of so on board with the idea of getting small groups together to address specific issues that where they do the research, they do the strategizing, ultimately wind up providing proposals for either action, through the government or action through the consensus of these partners working together. So a survey that maybe even before you are strategizing the survey, you're strategizing, essentially going back to what you said, Mark, is, are there very specific things that we think, generally specific, things that we think we want to tackle, whether it's food insecurity for, mental health issues, family health issues, a lot of access issues, that are economically driven, but also educationally driven, even just the lack of information about resources, for instance. All of those things, may wind up becoming individual silos. Obviously, the walls on those are paper thin or transparent, but at least that you have some folks that have something like a charge, something like a mission of what it is that they want to try to address, potentially coming out of the survey. My 2 cents.
Was there any group of people that emerged you could see working together for this community center concept? Who was talking about that?
That came from Will Rivera.
Will, okay.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think all the folks that were there agreed. By the time that came up, we'd started losing a couple folks who had to leave the meeting a little early. But there was certainly consensus that was a great idea.
I did ask Will to provide me with a little bit of follow-up on that by way of some bullet points that I can share with you now and share with you later if you'd like.
Sure.
But I love it because it does kind of flesh out. It's not the be-all and end-all, but it does kind of give you a sense of what could be. He writes a multi-purpose room, science, technology, and path lab, arts and crafts room, recording and editing studio, teaching kitchen, fitness center, reading and study rooms, first aid room, concession staff, lounge and game area, and art spaces and so forth and so on. This on top of the idea where community programs can sign up for space during the day and the night with senior gatherings, nonprofit meetings, and other offerings of services by not-for-profits and community members, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just, when you talk about bringing all kinds of resources into a concrete space, I love it, and I'll share that email with you. I think it's got some meat on its bones.
Did he say kitchen there?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
I don't think that's fun. I love it because the fact that commercial kitchen, there's been a lot of talk here for a while that people would love to have something where they could produce something, right? And turn their tomatoes into, some kind of tomato paste or something that they're able to sell. So there's some interest in that. I don't know if this is the scale, but sorry, I've just heard that conversation in other places as well.
It's just, and it's also just basic, even I know Lynn Bailey would teach with the teen center regularly on a fairly regular basis, kind of life skills around how to prepare food,
Right.
Eat healthy food, as opposed to spending more money than you should on stuff that's chock full of preservatives, from the grocery store, so it's.
I'm also thinking like business incubator type of thing, if
Yes.
there's anything we could do for, supporting folks that might want to begin thinking about it. So I love, I think all those ideas that Will put forward are great. We're envisioning a space that would be both of recreational use to many people, but also provide services in some ways. I think it could be a really neat thing. My mind goes immediately though to, or how do we fund it and things like that, but I think that we could, we certainly have the space, now we have to figure out how we would make that work, so.
And we do have, some funding partners that are self-identifying lately, from the Community Foundation to FOF, and others that, want to be a part of solutions like this. So I'll share that email with you guys.
Yeah, that'd be great, that'd be great. So it sounds at the very least, then, maybe we need to have a group beginning to work on that and exploring that ideas. I mean, provided that that's the direction that we wanna go with for use in that space, and I don't know if that's been decided, but, you know, maybe that's something that we wanna begin exploring a little more thoughtfully, because it seems like it seems like a good fit potentially with what some of the needs of the community are. We've already got the teen center in the basement, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would certainly advocate.
Like a one-stop shop almost.
Right.
So was Will's concept or the concept that was discussed a place where parents could come with their children, or a place where children would be left?
I don't know if
And
it's that fully
supervised.
formed.
Yeah, I don't think he, right. I
Okay.
think it was like, we need to have a community center.
Yeah.
And earlier in the conversation was, in a place where we might be able to have some of these particular service providers there at times, so it's kind of a one-stop place for folks to be able to, you know, get assistance that they might need.
Nice thing about that too, is, and that was kind of the conceit of the, it's an idea that I'll come back to one of these days, of a place for, kind of a children's learning area, don't call it a children's museum, I learned that. But, you know, where you could have the Huntington Library as a, for instance, providing some connector in the space, and it educates the folks who are engaged with that in that moment about the fact that the Huntington Library is 3 blocks away and has all kinds of more great stuff, same thing with the Discovery Center, you know, and on and on. So for someone who might be providing some sort of services in that moment, while they don't have the entire office there, it winds up being an educational piece and a connector piece for people to know. In a lot of cases, people just don't even know that the services exist.
Right.
You know.
And we could, I mean, we have OWL, and I know they're up in Fordham Park, but even providing an area, maybe like an annex, or not an annex, but of that mindset, because we do have OWL, and getting them into the center city would be great.
Yeah, we certainly don't wanna try to, you know, Boys and Girls Club does their thing at their site, the YMCA does their thing at their site, we wouldn't wanna replicate that, but be able to try to provide a space that could be used in multiple different ways by multiple different groups, and be something that brings people together in a particular type of way. So I think there need to be a lot of thought about that, but, you know, so it was more just an idea, like, we need to have something where people can come together, whether it be recreationally or anything else, but again, services was there and just, you know, brings folks together. That was the kind of concept. We didn't spend a lot of time on it, other than a mention and a lot of nod and agreement from everyone.
What about like a community garden? Brian Fawcett's big in the community. He would let football coaches up at school and stuff. He would let kids come down there and learn water and techniques, grow their own food. I know he would. He does a lot. Brian does.
Yeah,
Keeps kids out of trouble in the summer. They got a water plant. They get job skills.
right. Yeah, we have the community garden down in, what's Fort Wilcox area there, but I think that's more of an individuals use the sites. I don't know that we have a space where, you know, we're kind of encouraging kids to come down there and things like
Teaches
this.
kids.
A couple of the community organizations do rent it. I think there's, I have a plot there that I usually, past couple years, like Girls on the Run have it. I think Teen Center has a couple of plots they do too. So I think it is being used, but it is great. It's great to see kids
You know,
there.
Brian has them greenhouses. They're empty all summer long because it's hot.
Right.
The kids would have to be down there watering. He's a football coach already. Lives in my side of town. He loves kids. You know, he's there all day long in his office designing stuff.
Yeah.
They just have to water the plant.
That's the kind of private-public partnership
I don't
that we,
He likes grants too. He planted all the city trees. You know.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
I can actually have a conversation with Brian to see if it's gonna flesh that kind of thing out. But that's potentially a nice opportunity.
So it's, I mean, it feels like we have some of these pieces in play that we can do a little bit better job in some areas of supporting kids. But there's still some, and I think moving forward, like community center and using spaces around the city differently would all be good. But there's still some of the other pieces which really kind of stuck out to me. It was, all right, so one of those pieces was, how do we provide more, more mental health support for our students? What role could we play with that? And obviously, I know the school district is trying the best they can, and Ian from Teen Center talked about what they do, what kind of programming they do, but I don't know, I just feel like I need to give that more thought, because that's just stood out to me as one of the greatest stressors that seemed like it was most impacting a lot of the kids that we were referencing in the groups that folks were referencing, so. And I don't think it's,
What about having their primary care Bassett on hand? I mean, you can reach out to Bassett, they'll come, they're really nice, you know, you can just call Bassett and talk to the CEOs and stuff.
you know,
They have their primary care on hand, maybe they feel more comfortable with their own doctor. And their primary care, they'll send their own doctor over to the kids. Maybe they feel not as comfortable. I'm serious, some kids feel comfortable with their doctor, and like, somebody different, they'll feel comfortable talking about bad things with somebody they don't know, it's a stranger.
right,
I think they're just so short-staffed. I think that's the problem with both primary care and particularly mental health support. The staffing is short, and I think that's the problem. They just don't have the providers they need, especially, was there someone there from the county mental health department? And
Wait a minute. Yeah, I think so, DOH, yeah.
Peter Dye, I'm not sure, CUDSS? DAI?
Social services.
Social Services, yeah, that was the only person we had there.
So this could be, one of the things you're talking about on your agenda is the next steps piece.
Yeah.
Like a subgroup for that.
Some of the players that may not have been a part of that
Yeah.
conversation.
Okay, so, sorry, I'm trying to keep notes and talk at the same time. So it seems like next steps would be, I'm trying to see if I get them off the top of my head. One is the website issue, is trying to really make sure that we have all the resources there, all the groups there. And Mayor, I'd like to have a conversation with you about that at some point in time. Again, whether
Interesting thing, just to piggyback on that really quickly, there's been a lot of dialogue in social media because of the Department thing about the website and what we're doing now with the city website. Nice job. With the city website, it's now backlinking to this other content, so that when the content goes up, it finds residents in real time on the city's website. So it's actually kind of a great thing for both these websites as we're building them out, is that they wind up kind of enhancing one another just in terms of the algorithm that Google uses to elevate them. But so if something winds up being put on the All4 site, it'll find itself in real time on the city site as well, which without having to be replicated, it will just be linked in.
LinkedIn, okay. Well, that might be a place to think about then. I'm open to whatever you all think about how it would be best to situate this, but I think that's one thing I feel pretty committed to trying to get that moved forward, both from the summer as well as from this conversation here. Frankly, I think Superintendent Brownlee has been on that one, and I feel like, all right, we've got to accomplish that, so I feel like that's a pretty important one. Two, it seems like there's two potential subgroups right now. One, generally speaking, kind of children's mental health or mental well-being, maybe we could refer to it that way. And then two, the community center. So follow-up conversations there.
I did miss the first, chunk of the meeting. Were food insecurities a topic of conversation early on?
It was simply reference on this, it came up just as a different point. I doubled back on it near the end of the meeting because I just wanted to kind of raise it up a little bit just to understand what people thought about that, and also trying to think about this for one of our next things that we were trying to begin to address, that we wanted to address as a committee. But it really wasn't something that was heavily discussed.
Tangentially referenced and talked about when we were talking about poverty. I think it came up along with several other issues.
Yeah, actually, now I'm thinking about, Ian had mentioned that a lot of students, or a lot of young people come to the teen center a little bit hungry, so they have some food available and things like that. That's, I think that was the one reference that I heard that really stood out to me. So he tries to make sure he has food available for the folks that are using the teen center. And I thought to myself, there's, there it is again, food security. I mean, again, all these things kind of keep.
Tom's gotta be doing that in the school system as well.
Yeah, right.
It's a come in for
Being
breakfast,
responsive.
otherwise we wouldn't have breakfast.
A lot of teachers I know have their classroom stocked with snacks.
Yeah, that's what I did too. That and
But that's kind of,
cash if you go buy stuff.
Good
Thank you.
like I said,
thoughts, guys. Have a good day.
Take care.
just to finish what I thought on this, that's a lot of individuals seeing the concern and dealing with them, with that concern uniquely themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe in terms of, I don't know the answer, but maybe there is something that could be more coordinated to ensure that that service is being provided, whether it's provided through the school, provided through the teen center, or provided through member, that in some fashion or other, that need is being addressed maybe in a way that's a little bit more coordinated.
Where is it, what region, so, growing up in Schenectady, we had a regional food bank in Albany. Does anybody know where this region's Southern Tier, or, Mohawk Valley's food bank is? Like, there's a big regional food bank? There is one. Might be. Utica?
That's what I would imagine, but
Yeah, it's like one.
we seem to slip through the cracks of everything. Bennington, Albany, Utica.
Equidistant, yeah, just about.
I think then, in terms of next steps, your thought about surveying them, particularly with what actions are most vital and what we want to do next.
Sure.
And that would need to take some, I think, sketching out a little bit more what, I think as the mayor suggested, what we're trying to get from that and where we want to go with that. Because it seems that there's a lot of different directions we could go. Then the last piece is the facilitating further conversations. And again, maybe those can be some of those subgroups, but one way or another, we need to, what's the mechanism for furthering these conversations and for beginning to, as you're suggesting with the survey, beginning to identify projects that, I mean, what would be nice is if we could spin off these different groups that are working on this, and we're, certainly communicating with them. It's not that they are ad hoc committees of the common council, but they're a group that are working on a particular issue. They've identified, they feel like they can address this piece, and they have a very clear task, project they want to work on, and then we can begin to work with them as well. So, and maybe that's part of our survey. Would it help to have some kind of organizational structure, through which we can begin to try to address some of the actions and do this in small groups of kind of similar-minded folks. So it's not all needing to kind of flow through here, everything has to flow through here, but we can kind of be involved and create the structure for it.
One of the things that's been useful in the Housing Commission model is, and again, there are no walls between groups that are working on things that, that separate this person's charge from that person's charge. There's always going to be overlap. You can't address one thing without bleeding into what somebody else is working on. So by not just posting the notes from the various meetings that can be shared back and forth and are shared back and forth, but also a lot of times folks will identify a resource, and then that will get put up for everybody's benefit, and so forth. And in this construct that you're talking about, that would probably go a long way to that cross-educational piece, so that people aren't working in silos and find themselves duplicating somebody else's effort, or even, doing something that runs counter to somebody else's thinking, by being able to share it, through a website. So just put that out there.
Yeah. No, I think anytime we can share information, make sure that we're not kind of stuck in our silos and sharing that would be valuable. I think it's kind of what we're talking about here with all these groups, is that A, action, and B, communication between groups, right, that they're continuing to communicate. I guess sometimes it's easy to get a little intimidated by the size of the tasks that are
Yes.
ahead of us, you know?
Yeah.
They're daunting, and at least I think if we can identify a few things, I think we can begin to plug away. I will say this piece one last time though, is that I came away with the feeling that, facilitation, our role as facilitators in this committee, our role as advocates, hint, Mayor, I know that you advocate, at Albany and other areas. That's a real crucial role. As well as then our keeping close to all this from a city perspective, and are there opportunities to work with groups and looking at grants? So I keep thinking, we've got it, it's now just trying to now continue to A, execute what we're trying to do, and then kind of keep the communication going. So, yeah, I don't know, I walked out of the meeting going, good discussion, but man, it was really some tough topics. All right, so maybe Luke, you and I can chat offline about the survey and
Yeah,
begin
absolutely.
thinking about that, and then,
I'll get started on it this week.
okay, and I'll try to maybe map out some things, maybe Mayor, you and I can shoot some email back and forth and see in terms of the subgroups, in terms of that, how we want to facilitate that. You know, if there's interest in the community center, I don't want to step on anybody's toes there, but you know, maybe to have that food security, as well as the mental health and mental well-being. All right, so at the last meeting, I thought we kind of landed on a really good approach to this, was to try to think about having kind of every other month-ish, I think we can certainly have a little bit of flexibility, of trying to convene some of the folks together to have conversations like we had now. The conversations, I think, are valuable, but more valuable than the conversations have to be the action afterwards. And I
Yep.
still feel like we don't have yet our head around how we create the action afterwards. So trying to really get some type of structure, sorry, I'm all about structure because that helps to support the action, to be able to keep these moving. But we had talked about maybe having an April meeting of stakeholders, but as I'm thinking about it, boy, April is, even though we're March 6th, I feel like
It's
April is
right there.
really
It's
come
right
really
there.
quickly. So maybe we need to think about it every 3 months type of thing, and maybe we want to think about more of a May meeting.
Yeah.
That was the idea, was to have another stakeholder meeting with a different set of partners. Katie also thought that it would be a good idea to get the, sorry, I forget the exact topic sorry, the exact name of the committee, but the Human Rights Commission, I think.
Commission, Community Relations,
Right,
Human Rights.
Thank you,
Yes.
Commission. Say it one more time.
Commission on Community Relations and Human Rights.
It's just a long one.
It
Community
is.
Relations and Human Rights. Thank you, and I don't mean any disrespect to them, I just think about the.
I was on it 3 years, that's how I know it.
But she was thinking that there might be a good space to have one of the representatives. I know she was reaching out, so maybe we can try to plan our next meeting, have a representative from that organization, because she felt like there might be some overlap, that maybe we would have some shared interest in trying to work together on some of the particular projects. So I'd really like to get them in to talk to us before we kind of move forward, because if they could be kind of partners in some of the things we're trying to identify and try to work on, I think it would be good to do that, to include them in that partnership rather than duplicate effort. So I think she was gonna reach out, and I was hoping we'd have the person here at the meeting, but I don't think we were able to get that locked down, so.
So many of those folks on the committee are so, commission, are so deeply ingrained in the community. They have a real finger on the pulse, so to speak,
Yeah.
of what's going on and what's needed. So I look for whoever it is, if it's Shannon or if it's Reverend Marty or anybody else, it's really almost not intimidating, but when you first start, it's like, wow, these folks have a lot more knowledge than I got.
Well, I mean,
I know.
that's, every single meeting I've been to, it's like, you know, I know about my piece of the world, but hearing everyone else's piece of the world is like, whoa, there's a lot of pieces out here, and there's a lot of problems out here, and
Yeah, there'll be a.
and then on the other, there's a lot of really great people working really super hard, doing whatever they can, and that's my other takeaway from this in general, is that there's some dynamic people doing good work, great work. So yeah, so I'd like to maybe get them for, maybe once a month, I can't even think, once a month, maybe, don't mind me. So maybe we have them our April meeting to try to have that main meeting to make sure that we're moving forward with that group. Does that sound like a good plan?
It does. I think that meeting is April 3rd, right? It's the first Monday?
April 3rd.
Yeah, it'll be April 3rd is our next meeting.
Okay, I'll touch base with Katie and see if she can reach out to them and get them set up for that. I guess I'm a little reluctant to move forward until we've had a conversation with them. But then I would like to think about May being that food insecurity summit.
Yep.
If we can maybe kind of begin to think about independently who would be good. I'd love to get other people involved. We have some great people there, but folks that are really dealing with this specifically. So, Rose, now, if you know of anybody on your end of things,
Well, I'm seeing here that we are part of the Northeast Regional based in Albany Food Bank.
So it's all the way out. Okay, that's the closest
But
one.
it lists a ton of very local resources that are tied
Good.
into that.
It's an absolute. I used to volunteer there. It's an absolutely massive
Yeah,
amount of food.
Salvation Army in Oneonta, Saturday's Bread, St. James Food Pantry, St. Mary's Food Pantry, the Lord's Table. So it's all on the northeastern.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we could reach out to all of those.
yeah.
I mean, the list is right here.
right, perfect, good.
Interesting.
It is interesting.
Yeah. I didn't realize we were part of this.
I didn't. I imagined. I mean, Albany, as Mark was saying, Binghamton, Utica, they're all equidistant. But I definitely felt maybe we'd be more just. Utica seems like a closer area, even if it's not geographically closer. It seems closer, or Binghamton even. But yeah, I know. I it's been many years, but I used to volunteer there.
Makes me wonder if those groups are already talking on their own.
But I specifically remember being at that first summit, sitting close to a couple people that were in the food realm that really hadn't talked to each other before.
Right, right.
So it may well be, I think, of great benefit to
Yeah.
bring everyone together.
Yeah. And that's what I'm finding that some of this has been helpful for. Just even again, the one thing that folks shared those resources at the end of the last meeting and then Will sent it out, maybe helped another organization who didn't know about that resource,
Right.
and it looked like it was a great resource. So maybe just at that level, and that's where I keep going back to, could we do this more in a more organized fashion, more regular fashion as well? What does that look like, and how do we conduct those, convene those? And then also in a way that it's not just coming together to talk about problems, but I feel like everyone can do that pretty well, but also people want to use their time. These are people that are focused on a problem and trying to solve a problem, right? So they want to use their time to be able to try to work on a problem. How do we facilitate that also? So sorry, that's what I've been kind of wrapping around in my head over the last couple of weeks since this conversation, well, even since August, about how do we turn this all into action that is sustainable, that is driven by everybody and not driven by, one of us, so that there's kind of real ownership across different folks. Because I think that's the key for it being sustainable. Many of us will come and go, but our partners who are working on this, these people have been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, that's absolutely the key. Making sure we have something that gets built that outlives all of us.
Right, yes, exactly. Exactly. All right, so April 3rd, we will invite the commission. I'm just going
Yeah.
the commission. And we'll have some conversations there, see where we might have common cause, common purpose, common focus.
Fantastic.
We will then spend the second half talking about the food insecurity group. I'll take a look at that website, thank you, Doctor, and send out that to everybody. And If there's other groups, I was thinking, for example, like churches, I don't know if they have,
Yeah, there's, even on the Human Rights Commission, Reverend Marty, is on there, she's over at, and they do a lot with community, so there's
Right.
definitely, that commission really helps connect a lot of great resources in the community.
good. Then I think that'd be good to just, have the conversation with them, as who else do we need to have as part of this conversation? And then move forward there and see what we can do. And then maybe what we can do is have the very least, get the website set up that we have those resources. I think, we shared the list with you, did we?
It hasn't been sent.
It hasn't been sent? Okay. All right, I'll touch base with them and see if we can get that done. All right, so maybe we can try to have that up in time to be able to do that. Just need to go to that.
I'm sending you this link right now.
I'm sorry?
I'm sending you this link.
Okay, thank you. All right, does that sound like a plan?
Sounds like a plan.
Mayor, any closing?
No, just, I love the work being done here. I really do. Thank you.
Mal, thanks. I think the more I reveal, the more frustrated I get, and just really want to, feel like we are able to establish something that's creating action
Right.
and
So that,
solutions.
that really is the key, especially when you start talking about bringing together, working groups. You always have to be aware of how quickly people will become frustrated for the fact that their talk isn't generating action.
Right.
And, you want to generate action and you're frustrated already that you're not seeing the action as quickly as you want to, but it's absolutely the key to keeping people engaged is making sure that you don't feel like they're spinning the wheels.
Right.
People, especially in this venue,
Yeah.
people, the health and wellness people are just maxed out. So to be able to bring them to the table is a win to begin with, and that was the thing I was referencing earlier. I was so impressed to see the numbers of people on short notice show up. So the key is to ensure exactly as you're doing, that as we bring them to the conversation, that conversation is going to generate action because we have structure, like you said, structure